talking, he says, I can't do this. I can't go to battle with your armor on. Which leads to my second point. Rely on God's strength, not your own or not the strength of others. David recognized, the reason David rejected wearing the armor of Saul was because he recognized that if he was going to go into battle and be victorious, it wasn't going to be in his own strength. It was going to be in the strength of his God. That it didn't matter what the equipment was, he was more concerned about who was the equipper. Because he recognized that if he was going to go into battle with his own strengths, there was no way that he'd be able to take on Goliath. But he recognized that if he went in with the strength of God, that he was going to be victorious one way or the other. And it didn't matter if he had the latest and greatest armor or if he had five smooth stones from the brook, because it was less about the weapon and more about the strength that he had from God. And so he goes into battle. Now I do want to take a pause and as I was reading and preparing for the message, I noticed this, and I had never noticed this before, and I've grown up on this story. But every time that Goliath called out the people of Israel, he referred to the army as Saul's slaves, or the army of Saul. But whenever David referred to the army of Israel, he referred to them as the armies of the living God. You see, context matters. For the army, they thought of themselves as Saul's slaves, and so their focus was on their strength, on their training. But when David looked at the army, he recognized that they are the army of the living God. And so he said, there's no way that we can go into battle and be defeated because our God is greater than whatever that they have. And friends, I think that's an important point for us to look at, is we are children of God. So whatever the adversity, whatever the obstacle, your God is greater than your Goliath. Your God is greater than whatever situation or adversity you're facing in this present moment, because your God is greater. Another thing that I want to look at is David, when he's trying to convince Saul to let him go into battle. He says, look, I can do this. I can fight Goliath because when I was a shepherd, I took on a lion and I took on a bear. So in the same way that I can take on this lion and the bear, I can take on Goliath. This is nothing to me. What was David doing? David was reminding himself of previous victories because that's where his confidence was coming from. He recognized that it was God who strengthened him to take on a lion and to take on a bear. And so moving forward, it was nothing for him to take on Goliath. Friends, we need to take on that same mentality as we endure our obstacles and we endure our adversities in life. The reason that we can be confident that God will see us through our present circumstance is because we can look back on the past and see what He's already done. We can see that God is faithful. I believe that God can heal because He's healed in the past. I believe that God can provide financially because He's supernaturally provided in the past. I can believe that God will restore relationships and restore marriages because He's done so in the past. I look to what God has already accomplished, and that builds my faith. Friends, that's what David was doing when he was saying, I can take on Goliath because I've taken on a lion and I've taken on a bear. So I don't know what your present circumstances is right now, but I think what you need to do as you're focusing is not focus on your adversity or not focus on your trial, but focus on how good God is. Maybe our prayer times need to be more about God and less about our problems. Maybe what we need to do is focus and just spend some time in prayer thanking God for how good He is. Thanking God for being the creator of the universe. Thanking God for all He's already done. And I promise you, the more we focus on God's goodness and God's strength, the less and less our adversities and our Goliaths will look as a challenge. So we need to focus on what God has already done, and that will dictate our confidence going into our present circumstances or our future trials. So David does just that, and he goes and he takes the 5 smooth stones and he goes into battle with Goliath, and still Goliath is talking trash. Goliath is still calling him out. He says, "Who does this little kid think he is?" And David says nothing. He goes up. He slings his slingshot. All it takes is one smooth stone, and it kills Goliath on impact. And David, I love this, because David, I think David's feeling a little confident right there. Because David goes and he takes Goliath's own sword and he cuts his head off. David recognizes that I did this not because of my own strength, but I'm gonna prove just how good God is. That I was able to defeat Goliath with one smooth stone. This military leader, this giant, this mammoth of a man, I killed with one smooth stone, and then I cut his head with his own sword. That was a statement move. He was making a statement not only to the Philistines, but also to the rest of the army that said, look, our God is greater. However strong you think Goliath is, our God is greater. However scared Goliath had you, our God is greater. He made that statement move to say, look, our God can and will continue to provide for us. Our God can and will continue to protect us. All we have to do is rely on him. All we have to do is trust in his strength. So he does that. He kills Goliath, and the people celebrate. And then we see David's rise and ascent to the throne, or what we think would be his natural rise to the throne. Because he becomes a military leader. And it says that he becomes so successful or rises up the ranks so successfully that the people start to make a song that says Saul has killed his thousands, but David has killed his tens of thousands. And for an insecure leader like Saul, having somebody that's under you, that's receiving all of this acclaim and receiving all of this praise, that's a threat to your leadership position. And so Saul, he changes his demeanor. He changes his perceptions of David, and he starts to feel threatened by David. And on a number of occasions, he tries to kill David. David's mentor tries to kill him. He tries to kill that dream. To the point where David, who has forged this strong bond with Jonathan, Saul's son, says, you know what, David, I love you. I recognize that you are God's chosen to be the heir apparent to the throne. I recognize that it's probably rightfully my position, but I recognize the anointing on your life so much so that I'm okay with you succeeding my father as a king.